Guitar Gardens. Today we're going to be looking at an essential approach to triads. This is particularly useful if you're playing with another player or you just want to own the neck a bit more. Let's check it out. Click the link in the description below to get the lesson resources, full color diagrams, and all the information you need to make you a better guitar player and to concrete these concepts. The progression I played at the start was in the key of G, and it contained the chords G, C, D, and then it went to another part which was E minor, D, C, and then to G. But you'll notice that I wasn't playing those chords. The backing track was, but what I was doing was I was playing these triads, and I'm going to explain those to you today. So let's look at the first one, which is the chord G. I played it like this. The way I play that chord is very simple. I take this E-shape G chord, which we should be familiar with. It's based on the E bar chord, E open shape. Up on the 3rd fret, it forms a G bar chord. The second chord that I'm pulling from is a D shape. If I take that D shape and play it up here with my root note up here on the 8th fret, I have another G chord. So going back to the E shape bar chord, if I take these two notes, which I normally play with my 3rd and pinky, and I bar them, and I just take the top of this G chord, this D-shaped G chord, and play that with my ring finger and pinky, I end up with this G chord. It's actually a G dyad because I'm playing G in the 5th of the scale and G in the 5th of the scale. So I'm playing a D, G, D, G. It gives a very high, happy, melodic sound as opposed to just playing G, which is very full. Very full. This cuts through. And of course I can arpeggiate it. And it's just another chord to put in your arsenal. It's movable because your root note is there on the B string, but also if you're visualizing this G chord, this shape, and you're building it from there, I can go up 2 frets and I've got an A, go down 2 frets, I've got an F, back to a G. The second chord we're going to look at is a C. And the way I played that C chord was like this. So what I'm doing is I'm taking it from this A-shaped bar chord. So if you remember this A-shaped bar chord here, slide it up to the 3rd fret, our root note's there, on the 3rd fret of the A string, we have a C chord. So I'm just going to take what my ring finger was doing and bar the 5th fret and add my pinky to the 8th fret of the B string, adding a G note. And then all of a sudden I have another dyad, another major dyad. Well, it's technically a 5 chord, so it's C5, CG, CG. Gives you a nice bright cutting through sound, just like this other chord. So instead of playing that chord, or that chord shape, that C, I'm playing this C. Adding that high G helps it to cut through. The advantage of doing this is that when I'm playing from G to C, all I have to do is move one finger. So if I go back to that G chord, again, taking the bar from the E shape, taking the top of that G shape, so I bar the 5th fret, and I just take my ring finger off. I've got C, ring finger on, G, ring finger off, C, on, I've got G, off, I've got C. And you can start to play with a little bit of a melodic kind of line, arpeggiate, by hammering on that note on the G string going from 5 to 7 when you would need to go from C to G. So if I'm going G down to C, if I go back to G, I just hammer that on. The next chord we're going to be looking at is D. And just like we did with the C, we take that C shape, move it up 2 frets, we play D. So that again is based off this A shape D chord. Okay, with the root note there on the 5th fret, we have a D chord. Bar the 7th fret, 3 frets higher on the B string, we have an A. And again, this is like a D5 chord basically, so it's A, D, A, D, or D, A, D, A, whichever way you want to say it, but it's a D with its 5th. So we have D there, we have C there, adding that ring finger back on, we have G. The 4th chord in this progression was E minor. Now with E minor, I played it like this. It's a bit of a tastier chord, because actually, if you look at what I'm actually playing, it's an E minor 7. So what we have here, it's based off this E minor shape, which is actually an A minor bar chord. So we take our A minor, slide it up to the 7th fret where our E note, root note is. We have an E minor chord. But instead of playing it like that, which I could because it's not too much of a distance, what I'm doing instead is I'm playing the E root note on the A string, so 7th fret of the A string. I'm muting the D string. I'm playing the 7th fret of the G string, and that's giving me my flat 7th. And then with my ring finger, I'm playing the 9th fret of the B string, which is giving me my flat 3rd of the chord. So that makes it minor. So E minor 7. So it's a nice chord there. So your root note is there on the A string. Okay, so whatever note that is on the A string, that's going to be your minor chord, or minor 7 to be more exact. So E minor 7, D minor 7, C minor 7, B minor 7. You want to find a way to play a B minor? There you go. Right there. But in this case, we're playing E minor 7. Now the advantage of this is when I'm moving from and to G to E minor, these 2 notes I'm already playing. So if I go back to my G, all I have to do to change my G to an E minor is that I take my 1st finger off and then I add my 2nd finger to hit that E note. So I've got E minor, I've got G, E minor, G, E minor, G. Similarly, if I'm going from C to E minor, right, I take my ring finger off to make a C chord, and then all I have to do is add my ring finger and add my 2nd finger to get an E minor. So E minor, C, E minor, C, E minor, C. It's that simple. The whole point of this is so that you have smaller amount of movement to go, and then you can focus on particular notes. A way to actually make this even more compact, as we're going from G to C, and then once we go to D, instead of climbing up 2 frets, what we can do from that C is just bar the 7th fret, just the D, G and B strings, and that gives us a D triad. So just to say again, going from C to D, we can either just move our 1st finger up 2 frets, or use our ring finger just to bar those three strings and we get a D major chord. So in review, the whole point of this is to keep the movement tight. We're actually learning movable triad shapes or diad shapes that we can actually use all over the neck in different keys. G, C, D, E minor. So what I'll do now is I'll just play through the progression one more time. I'll do a bit of chord playing and some arpeggios based on those new shapes. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time in the Guitar Garden.